What's up, my friends, and welcome back to the Influence Exchange. Before we get into today's episode, I want to start with something simple but important. Thank you. Thank you for pressing play. Thank you for taking time out of your day, whether you're listening on your commute, during a workout, at your desk, or in a quiet moment you carved out for yourself. I don't take that lightly, and if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for being here, for staying present, for choosing reflection over distraction. Your time matters, and the fact that you chose to spend it here tells me something about you. Why? Because you care about growth, accountability, and becoming better than you were yesterday. I'm your host, JV, and today's episode is for a very specific type of listener. This is not an episode for people who aren't trying. This is for the people who are. The ones who show up, the ones who follow through, the ones who are disciplined, responsible, and consistent, yet still feel stuck. If you ever found yourself thinking, I'm doing the work, why doesn't it feel like I'm moving forward? Or I'm consistent, but my results have leveled off. Or I don't feel lost, but I don't feel momentum either. And for those listeners, this episode is for you. Today, we're talking about why progress stalls even when effort is high, and more importantly, what people do differently when they hit a standstill. In today's show, we're going to break down why feeling stuck is more often a signal, not a failure, the hidden reasons disciplined people stop progressing, how routines can quietly turn into comfort zones, and how to redesign your systems instead of blaming yourself. This isn't about motivation. It's not about starting over. It's about evolving. And before we go any further, I also want to open the door to you. This show is growing because of the people listening to it. And I want more of your voices in the room. If something you hear on this podcast reunites with you, challenges you, or reflects your real life experiences, and you'd like to come on the show and talk about it, I want to hear from you. You can send me a direct message on Instagram or TikTok at The Influence Exchange, or you can reach out through the fan mail link in the episode description. Everything you need is right there. No pressure, no performance, just real conversations about real growth. So take a breath, lean in, and stay with me. Because if you feel stuck right now, it doesn't mean you're behind. It usually means you're standing on the edge of the next level. Now let's get into it. Let me say this clearly, because some of you need to hear it without hype or sugarcoating. You're not stuck. You're overdue. Overdue for a new level of thinking. Overdue for a new way of leading yourself. Overdue for growth that matches the effort you're already putting in. Here's why I know this is true. Most people who are actually stuck aren't disciplined. They aren't consistent. They aren't showing up. But if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you are doing the work. You get up, you handle your responsibilities, you follow through, you take care of people, you keep things moving. From the outside, it looks like you're doing everything right. And internally, it feels flat. And that's the part people don't talk about enough. Because when you're lazy and stuck, the solution is obvious. You must start. But when you're disciplined and stuck, that's confusing. You start asking yourself, what am I missing? Why does this feel harder than it should? Why am I not seeing the same return on the effort I'm putting in? Here's the truth most people never hear. Feeling stuck is often a sign that the systems that got you here can't take you any further. The habits that got you here won't get you there. The routines that once created growth are now maintaining comfort. Maintenance feels like standstill when you're outgrown the level it sustains. Let me make this practical because you might be working hard but on autopilot, being consistent but not intentional, doing what used to work instead of what needs to change, following routines that no longer challenges you. Because you're not failing, you're outgrowing your current level. And here's the uncomfortable part, but the honest one. Growth doesn't always feel like progress. Sometimes it feels like friction because the next level usually requires new boundaries, harder decisions, more honesty with yourself, letting go of systems that feel safe but no longer serves you. That's why this stage is so frustrating. You're not burnt out, you're under challenge. You're not lost, you're misaligned. You're not confused, you're operating with old rules in a new season. And leaders, real leaders, don't panic at this stage because they audit. They step back and ask, what am I still doing out of habit? Where have I been choosing comfort over growth? What would this look like if I stopped playing small with myself? This is where people either level up or settle. And settling doesn't always look like quitting. Sometimes it looks like staying busy but going nowhere. So, if you've been feeling restless, if things that used to motivate you no longer do, if your discipline feels real but your motivation feels gone, that's not a warning sign, that's an invitation. An invitation to upgrade your standards, to refine your systems, to lead yourself with more clarity, not more force. And as we move through this episode, I want you to keep one thought in your mind. The thought is you don't need to do more. You need to do what you're already doing, but at a higher level. That's where the breakthrough is, and that's exactly where we're going to next. Let's get into the real reason people plateau, not the obvious ones, because most people plateaus don't happen due to laziness, lack of talent, or a lack of effort. They happen quietly, gradually, and invisibly. You don't wake up one day and say, I'm done growing. You wake up one day and realize nothing has changed in a while. With that, here are the 4 hidden reasons why that happens. Reason number 1, you're running on old systems that no longer match your capacity. This one hits me hard. The systems that once helped you grow are now the same systems keeping you in place. Think about it. Your routine that once pushed you now just maintains you. The habits that once stretched you now feels automatic. The structure that once created progress now creates comfort. And that's not failure, that's growth. But most people don't upgrade their systems when their capacity grows. They just repeat what used to work longer than they should. A real life example. You're still managing your time the same way you did years ago, even though your responsibility, expectations, and pressure have doubled. So you feel busy but not advancing, disciplined but not fulfilled. Plateaus happen when growth outpaces structure. And leaders who don't upgrade their systems end up exhausted instead of evaluated. Reason number 2, you've confused consistency with progress. This is a big insight, and it's easy to miss. Consistency is powerful. Consistency loses its power when it's no longer intentional. You can show up every day, do the work, hit the routine, check the boxes, and still not move forward. Why is that? Because you're repeating behaviors, not refining them. Here's a real life example. You've been working hard for years, but you haven't raised your standards, increased the difficulty, tighten your focus, or challenge your thinking. So the effort stays the same, but the return doesn't. That's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because growth requires progressive pressure, not just repetition. Consistency keeps you steady, challenge moves you forward, and most people plateaus happen when challenges quietly disappear. Reason number three, you're avoiding the one change you know you need to make. This is the one nobody wants to admit. Most people already know what's holding them back. They just haven't acted on it. It might be a conversation you've been putting off, a boundary you refuse to enforce, a role you've outgrown but not released, a comfort zone you keep defending. Let me give you some real examples. You know you're overcommitted, but you keep saying yes. You know you need to let something go, but you're afraid of the fallout. You know the next step requires risk, so you stay prepared instead of moving. Plateaus don't always come from doing too little. They often come from protecting what feels safe. And growth doesn't negotiate with comfort. The level you want is the other side of the decision you keep delaying. Reason number four, your identity hasn't caught up with your responsibility. This one is deep and very common among high performers. Your life has expanded, your role has grown, your responsibilities has increased, but internally, you're still operating from an older version of yourself. Here's some real examples. You're leading more people, but still thinking like a contributor. You're carrying more weight, but still managing yourself like you did years ago. You've earned a seat, but you haven't fully stepped into the identity. So, you hesitate, you overthink, and you second guess yourself. You stay busy executing instead of rising to the next level. When identity lags behind responsibility, people plateau emotionally, not practically. You're capable but cautious, qualified but restrained, ready but not owning it. And until identity catches up, growth stays on a standstill. Let's jump into the reality check. If any of these hit close to home, here's the important part. This doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're at a transition point. Plateaus aren't signs to quit. They're signals to recalibrate. They're invitations to upgrade your systems, raise your standards, make the hard decisions, step into the identity your life already requires. And for the next topic, we're going to break down exactly how this shows up in real life so you can recognize where you are and what to do next. Because staying here isn't inventable, it's optional, and leaders don't stay optional for long. Let's jump into the next topic and let's make this real. Because feeling stuck doesn't look dramatic. It doesn't feel like failure. It feels like maintenance. You're not falling apart. You're functioning. And that's exactly why it's dangerous. Let me walk you through a few real world scenarios and then I'll share one that hit close to home for me. Scenario number one, the high performer who's outgrown their current level. This is the person who shows up early, delivers consistently, gets trusted with responsibility, rarely gets questioned. From the outside, it's solid, but from the inside, it's restless. You're doing well, but not growing. You're reliable, but underutilized. Capable, but not challenged. Grateful, but unfulfilled. And the scariest part, no one is pushing you because no one thinks you need pushing. So you stay where you are, not because you're incapable, but because you've become too good at staying comfortable. Scenario number two, the person who keeps preparing instead of moving. This often gets unnoticed. You tell yourself, I just need a little more time, or I want to be fully ready, or I'm still learning, or I don't want to rush it. And preparation turns into protection. You don't fail, but you always don't advance. You read, you plan, you think, you wait, and waiting feels responsible until years pass. Scenario number three, the leader whose role no longer matches their growth. You have grown, your thinking has sharpened, your capacity has expanded, but your role hasn't changed. And instead of naming it, you normalize it. You say things like, this is just how it is, I should be grateful, others have it worse. You remain in a role that no longer challenges you, and over time, frustration begins to build. Not towards people, but towards yourself. Because deep down, you know you're playing smaller than you're capable of. Let me tell you something personal. There was a season in my life where everything looked fine. Career was stable, people trusted me, I was delivering, I was respected, but internally, I felt flat. Not burnt out, not unhappy, but quietly stuck. And what scared me wasn't that things were bad, it was that I had started getting really good at maintenance. I wasn't being stretched anymore. I wasn't uncomfortable anymore. I wasn't being challenged in the ways that force growth. And here's the moment that changed everything. I realized I wasn't spending more energy protecting what I had than building what I wanted next. My routines worked, but they stopped pushing me forward. Standards that once pushed me, but now they just kept me safe. Responsibilities that filled my time, but not my potential. And the truth, no one was holding me back. I was. Not because I was afraid of failure, but because I was afraid of disrupting what was working. That realization hit me hard because it meant the plateau wasn't external, it was internal. I had to ask myself a question I didn't want to answer. And that question was, am I still growing or am I just staying capable? And once I asked that question, I couldn't unsee it. That question forced me to change how I structured my time, raised my internal standards, stopped waiting for permission to evolve, make moves that felt uncomfortable again. Not reckless moves, intentional ones. And that's when momentum came right back. Not because life changed, but because I did. And why I'm sharing this with you? Because if you're listening right now thinking, this sounds familiar, good. That means you're not broken. It means you're at a threshold. And thresholds are uncomfortable because they demand decisions. Because you don't need more motivation. You don't need a new personality. You don't need to start over. You need to stop pretending maintenance is growth. And in the next topic, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to break out of this. with a clear, repeatable reset you can actually apply from the research I found. Because being stuck isn't your story, it's a signal, and signals are meant to be answered. Now, let's get practical, because awareness without action just becomes frustration. If you feel stuck, stored, or restless, it's not because something is wrong with you. It's because something hasn't been examined. Growth doesn't usually stop because of a lack of effort. It stops because we stop auditing how we're operating. So I want to walk you through what I call the Plateau-Breaking Audit. A simple, honest check-in you can use anytime life starts to feel repetitive, flat, or misaligned. This is not about criticism. This is about clarity. Think of it like checking the dashboard before something breaks. Audit part number 1. Are the standards still challenging you? Let's start here because this is where most plateaus live. Ask yourself, when was the last time I raised my standards? Am I operating on old expectations that once pushed me, but now just maintained me? Have I been confused being reliable with being challenged? Here's how this shows up in real life. You hit deadlines, but you're not stretching. You're executing at a high level, but growth has stopped. You feel busy, but not fulfilled. Standards that once required growth can quietly turn into comfort zones. And comfort zones don't feel dangerous, they feel familiar. If your standards no longer requires courage, learning, or discomfort, you're not failing, you're losing momentum. Audit part number 2. Where are you over functioning instead of advancing? This one hits hard for a lot of people. Over functioning looks like doing more of what you're already good at, taking on responsibilities without gaining leverage, being the go-to person without moving forward. Now ask yourself this: am I solving the same problems over and over? Am I busy because I'm growing, or am I avoiding change? Am I being valued for my potential or just my reliability? Overfunctioning feels productive, but it often delays progression. It keeps you needed, but not necessarily developed. Audit part number 3. What conversations are you avoiding? Plateaus are rarely about skill. They're about avoidance. Ask yourself honestly, is there a conversation I keep postponing? Am I avoiding feedback, asking for clarity, or naming what I want next? Am I waiting for someone else to notice I'm ready? Avoided conversations create stale outcomes, whether it's with a manager, a partner, a colleague, or even with yourself. Growth requires communication. What isn't spoken can't be built. Audit part number 4. Are your habits supporting the next version of you? This is where things get very real. Look at your daily patterns and ask, are my habits aligned with where I want to go or where I already am? Would my future self thank me for today's routines? Plateaus happen when the version upgrades but the habits don't. You don't break out of plateau by thinking differently alone. You break out by operating differently. Small habits reinforce identity, and identity determines trajectory. Audit part number 5. Are you waiting for permission instead of ownership? This is one of the quietest plateau triggers. Ask yourself this: am I waiting to be chosen instead of choosing myself? Am I waiting for clarity that only action can create? Am I waiting for confidence instead of earning it? Here's the truth: most people don't get unstuck because someone unlocks the door. They get unstuck because they realize the door was never locked. Ownership is uncomfortable because it removes excuses, but it also freeing because it restores ownership. Now, let's talk about how to use this audit. This isn't something you rush through. I recommend pick one audit that hits you the hardest. Write down what you are avoiding, tolerating, or postponing. Choose one small corrective action this week, not a massive overhaul, not a dramatic leap, just a movement. Because momentum breaks plateaus, not perfection. If you're stuck, it's not because you lack ability, it's because your standards haven't been redefined, and your habits haven't caught up, and your ownership hasn't been fully claimed. And that's good news, because all three are within your control. In the next topic, we're going to turn this awareness into action with a clear challenge that forces momentum, not motivation, because the goal isn't to feel inspired, the goal is to move again. Here's the shift that most people never make, and it's the reason they stay stuck even while working hard. Most people believe the answer is more effort, more hours, more pushing, more grinding, more forcing progress. But effort alone doesn't move you to the next level. Growth does. And growth isn't about trying harder, it's about operating differently. Let me explain this in a way that hits real life. Why trying harder stops working. At some point, effort hits a ceiling. You can only work so many hours, carry so much responsibilities, push yourself so far on willpower alone. That's why plateaus feel draining. You're not lazy, you're not unmotivated, you're not broken. You're just applying old effort to a new level. And that never works. Trying harder is the same system that just burns you out faster. The people who break plateaus don't suddenly become superhuman. They change how you operate. They stop asking, what do I do more? And start asking, what version of me does this next level requires? That's growth. That's not about effort. It's about identity alignment. Here is what growth actually looks like. This is where listeners usually have the oh wow moment. Growth looks like saying no to things you used to tolerate, letting go of being liked in exchange of being aligned, stopping the habit of explaining yourself to everyone, upgrading your routines because your goals upgraded, choosing clarity over comfort, choosing ownership over waiting. It's quieter than hustle, but it's far more powerful. Let's now dive into the three internal shifts that break plateaus. Let's make this tangible. Number one, from proving to building. Early on, you try to prove yourself. Later, you realize proving keeps you reactive. Growth happens when you stop performing for approval and start building for longevity. Ask yourself this: am I still trying to prove I belong, or am I building what I believe in? Number two, from busy to intentional. Busy feels productive, intentional creates progress. Growth happens when you stop feeling time and start protecting energy. Ask yourself this: does this activity move me forward or just keeps me occupied? Number three, from comfort to ownership. Comfort keeps things predictable. Ownership creates movement. Ownership sounds like, this is on me, I figure it out, I won't wait for permission. Ask yourself this: where am I waiting? And when I should be deciding. Why this shift feels uncomfortable? This stage often feels lonely because you outgrown certain conversations, you question routines that once worked, you feel restless even when things look fine. That restlessness isn't failure. It's your internal signals that you outgrown the current version of your life. Growth doesn't always feel exciting. Sometimes it feels unsettling, and that's absolutely okay. Here's the most important part. If you're listening to this and thinking, I'm working hard, but something feels off, that's your cue. Not to quit, not to push harder, not to blame yourself, but to evolve, to ask what needs to change in how I think. What habits no longer match where I'm going? What am I holding onto because it's familiar, not because it's right, because effort got you here, but growth is what takes you forward. A very important takeaway: you don't break plateaus by doing more of the same. You break them by becoming someone new, one decision, one habit, one boundary at a time. Before we close this episode, I want you to hear this clearly, and I want you to hear it without pressure. You are not behind, not in life, not in your career, not in your growth, not compared to anyone else. You're not late. You didn't miss your chance. And you're not failing because things feel slower right now. What you're feeling is something very different. You're being called forward, called into a new season, a new level of awareness, a new way of operating, a new version of yourself that no longer fits inside old patterns. And that moment right there often feels like being stuck. But it isn't. It's transition. Here's the truth most people never hear: growth doesn't always announce itself as excitement. Sometimes it shows up as discomfort, as restlessness, as questioning, as realizing the old ways don't work anymore. And that doesn't mean something is wrong, it means something is changing. So, if you've been feeling unsettled, unmotivated, discontinued from routines that used to work, that doesn't mean you're losing momentum. It means you're outgrowing your current level. I want to thank you from the heart for pressing play today. Thank you for listening in your car. Thank you for listening during work or a workout. Thank you for giving this time to yourself. And if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for being here, for staying present, for choosing reflection over distraction. That choice matters more than you realize. This show exists because people like you are willing to pause, think, and ask, what's next for me? And that question is powerful. As you move forward from this episode, don't rush to fix everything. Don't pressure yourself to overhaul your entire life. Just do one thing: acknowledge that you're growing, and then make one small decision that reflects that growth: a boundary, a habit, a conversation, a choice, a commitment to yourself. Because momentum doesn't come from massive moves, it comes from aligned ones. If this episode reunited with you, if something clicked or felt uncomfortably familiar, share it with someone who might be in the same season. And if you want to be part of this conversation, you're always welcome. Send me a DM on Instagram or TikTok at The Influence Exchange, or check the episode description for ways to reach out to me directly. This isn't just a podcast, it's a space for people who are done staying where they're outgrown. You're not behind, you're being called forward. And I'm glad you are here for it. Subscribe, leave a review, and remember, your influence grows every time you choose courage over comfort. I'm JV. Stay curious, stay consistent, and keep influencing others.